So, hello everyone, Mondo here. Time to talk a very nice anime. Maybe the best anime is called High Guardian Spice, right? Usually, I have to stay away from the, let's say, call it the politics, right? But this is an anime, apparently, and I review all animes, right? And I love to review actual bad animes and say, well, this anime failed because of this reason, right? And I can immediately say here, now, I'm gonna piss off both sides, okay? I've seen every episode, so you better subscribe, seriously, push the like button, because I've watched every episode, okay? Most people have seen, you know, clips, right, and they're complaining about, I've seen every episode. I've written down comments about every episode, and do another video later where I actually break down every episode, you know, like a quick review. But this is gonna be one topic here about why it fails as, it actually fails being a woke progressive anime. Like, it was incredibly bad, because that's a whole goal, right? But seriously, I watched every episode, and I really spent time, and it was incredibly boring. So, but that being said though, the anime is incredibly boring, but it's not the worst anime I've seen. It is not even the worst anime this season, in my opinion. So, you know, I am very objective. That is Mondo's thing, right? I think be very, very objective, very, very honest. I don't actually think it's the worst anime, kinda. Like, it depends on how you look at it. Because this anime is incredibly cowardly. So arguably it is definitely the worst anime ever, because it's such incredibly cowardly. It doesn't do anything. It just pretends, it's incredibly cookie cutter, super simple and so on, right? But at the same time, it doesn't do anything insanely, you know, stupid like some other animes done this year, and even this season, that's been like incredibly bad decisions. Doesn't really do that right. So it's kind of like, arguably, it is the worst anime, because it's like, it's incredibly, like, kind of pathetic. But at the same time, it's like, it doesn't do this insanely bad stuff, right? But anyway, there's another video, more in detail. Here I want to talk about this general thing, how can it fail being woke progressive? That's like the whole goal of it, right? So if you don't know about High Guardian Spice, it's an anime done by Crunchyroll, of course, taking money right from the companies that make great animes, for example, LSP's viewers, you know, great animes, right? It was a Funimation. But anyway, makes animes like that, right? And then produces their own anime, which is obviously it's a cartoon, but they call it anime. That's why we're here reviewing it, right? Because I don't review cartoons, but we're reviewing anime. So, you want to go into the anime with that shit? Okay, let's talk about anime, right? That being said, I have seen Steven Universe, okay? And I actually quite like it in the beginning, right? I have seen Star vs. the Force of Evil, so I actually really like it. Great cartoon, right? And so on, right? So I'm well, I know this categories well, right? I'm obviously, people are gonna say, oh, you just hate it because of gay or trans. No, I grew up, I have every volume of Ranma. I freaking love Ranma, right? Written by the most, I would say, the most famous female author in Japan. Does a lot of Inuyasha, Ranma, and so on. Amazing manga and anime about, you know, of course, the main character turning into a woman. Transgender main character. Freaking in the 90s, right? But it's a billion times better than High Guardian Spice. I have every volume. It's an amazing manga. One of my favorite mangas, right? I sit here in my, of course, Futa Cream suit. I have, for example, Genderbender Luffy in my collection, right? And I have this huge, like, Futanari figure over here. One of the biggest Futanari figures that is produced in the world, yeah. And so on, quite expensive, but anyway. So, yeah, don't come with me with that, oh, you just don't like LGBTQ storylines. And if you're new to my channel, I'm always, you know, Otokunoku is always the best girl, Jesus Christ, man. But anyway, why does this thing fail so massively then on its own premise, right? Because this anime's main premise is that we're gonna push, you know, the whole idea that every woman can be whatever they want, and it's okay being gay, and it's trans being, it's awesome being all that stuff, right? How can it fail on its own massive thing? So the two things in this video. First, I'm gonna explain how it fails on actually what its goal is, and then I'm gonna cover some of the actual, basically woke progressive it has in its actual anime, right? So how does it fail then? Well, this is a dwarf. This is a dwarf, right? We all know that the dwarf usually is the big blacksmith guy, and he works in the foundry, and he makes weapons and so on, right? Isn't that like a racial stereotype? It's a massive racial stereotype, right? That the dwarf is the blacksmith. Can you tell me another maybe typical fantasy stereotype? Well, maybe that the cute elf is the archer girl. Yeah, of course the elf is gonna be the high elf archer. She's probably gonna be an archer, right? Or like the wood elf is gonna be obsessed with saving the forest. She's like, oh, I will have sex with any man, so they save my freaking trees, right? It's actually all ridiculous in this anime. If you know Ice Chase, yeah. Basically, she's like, oh, I have to save my forest, and I will sleep with any man that can help me save my trees. That's literally her character. So, isn't that very, very cliche? That to me feels incredibly cliche, super stereotypical. Or for example, then that the Amazon lady has to be a badass warrior, right? Who's a great character, but this is very much very fantasy stereotypical. And you see it of course in a lot of animes, you see it in video games and so on, right? It's, if anything, it's very, very basic, right? I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that that's how most fans are written, right? You have a dwarf to become the blacksmith, an elf is the archer, right? Legolas and so on, right? And the Amazon lady has to be a badass warrior, right? You can't have like an Amazon lady being a magician, because they're all kind of stupid, Amazon people, they have low IQ, right? It's, and so on. So, that's how High Guard Spice actually is his massive failure. It's a massive failure. In the next video, I'm going to discuss, why the writing is terrible and why it's so boring and so on, right? But just from a general standpoint, it really is failing on the first thing it's set up to do, right? The main agenda of High Guard Spice is to be, of course, progressive, racial progression, right? Vogue and so on, PC, all that good stuff. But you actually watch this anime, and you're like, oh, the dwarf girl? It's a blacksmith. Okay, she likes doing blacksmithing stuff. Oh, I see. And she goes into the blacksmith teacher guy, and she goes into a mine and does dwarf stuff, And her family is like, yeah, you turn into a blacksmith. That's good, because we're all blacksmiths, You're like, okay, yeah. And then, the dark elf, or wood elf, something like that. She's an archer. Because, she's an elf, she has to be an archer, right? And her parents are, like, obsessed with the forest, you know what I mean? And she's like, oh, I need to save the trees from the rot or something, right? And so on. And the main character is like a warrior lady, and her mom is a warrior, right? She's a human, so it's obviously it's classical warrior human, She can have a tomboy and so on. I also love how the anime kind of acts like having a tomboy female main character is something like, I don't know, groundbreaking or something. Because the anime has never done that before. We never had like a female badass warrior lady. That has never happened before. Or in games like, I don't know, Lightning or whatever. Yeah, that's never happened. Like that's like the first time I ever saw a pink-haired woman with a sword. Yeah, I haven't played F13 and so on. But anyway, the anime, it's incredibly bad actually when it comes to Vogue. And I genuinely mean it. I don't say it to be like, oh, the anime sucks. I genuinely mean it, right? That because like, if I was gonna write a very Vogue progressive anime, where, yes, the character is gay and someone is trans or whatever, so on, I also wouldn't make the wood elf be obsessed with the goddamn trees, right? I'm not saying it's wrong in other animes that the wood elf is into trees, because because that's typically how wood elves are, right? And the high elves are also into trees, or maybe arcane magic, right? And the blacksmith dwarf is into, the mines and what. I'm not saying that's bad, that's how fantasy is written, right? But I'll say, if you want to be progressive Vogue, shouldn't you be like, well, this wood elf girl, she's into, I don't know, steampunk, she's a steampunk girl, she's like, screw the forest, I want to burn the shit down, right? Wouldn't that be more, Vogue progressive? The dwarf girl has a little scene in episode 3, 4, kind of, about her, that she doesn't want to be like a stay-at-home mom, I guess, or something, but she still picks up the, the very basic dwarf blacksmith profession anyway, right? Wouldn't it be more interesting if she's like, my father is a blacksmith, I have 10 brothers, they're all blacksmiths, I wanna be, I don't know, a magician or something, I wanna be an arcane magician, I wanna be, something like that, right? Not having her become like a priest or like cleric or something, but it's kind of close to dwarves, right? Or a paladin. More if she turned into like, I wanna be a rogue maybe, I wanna be an assassin, right? Wouldn't that be more, racial class thing, right? It's kind of like if you ever played Here's of Might and Magic 3, for example, one of my favorite games. So it's a Traghawk, very typically people's favorite character in the Barbarian faction, because his ability is offense, so you get more and more damage, right, per level he has. And basically in this game, if you played it, you have 4 different stats, right, per hero, and the Barbarians are idiots. So they only get attacked, right. They're complete morons, so they can't get like spell power or knowledge, because they're idiots. And the Stronghold, the actual capital, can only have up to level 3 magic. Because again, they're idiots. Same with the Fortress, the defense, the reverse, the high defense there. So they're both like terrible at doing magic, right? Because all the heroes are complete morons. Like, you know, isn't that kind of typical racial stereotypes? Oh, you're a barbarian? Oh, you can only do physical stuff, yeah. Idiots. And if you're a wizard, right, of course you only have his magic points, you have 0 attack power, right? Isn't that incredibly stereotypical, right? If this anime actually wanted to push any boundaries, and especially because it's released in this current year, right, where everyone is already, you know, we have so many gay cats or whatever, right? Shouldn't they push those boundaries? Shouldn't they push the actual magical boundaries instead of just having that everyone is exactly, well, you know, everyone is obsessed with the trees, or she's an archer, you know, or so on, right? Wouldn't that be more interesting if the elf was into steampunk and she wanted to be a steampunk warrior or an archer or something? I get that's the main point of the video, honestly, right? Because I felt that was terrible. Obviously, I didn't have much expectation from this anime, but when you go into episode 3 and 4, roughly that point, you kind of see them position all the characters in the incredible stereotypical, you know, species, racial thing, right? The dwarf, blacksmith, and so on. Yeah, they kind of really put them into they're born, like, you're born in this race, you gotta have this job, right? Yeah. It's actually, you know, in a sense that it's very racist, right? This anime, yeah. It's yeah, it really is. Because they're like, well, if you're this thing, you have to be that thing. You have to, you know, you have to work in the class you were born as, right? And if anything, but it's just annoying. Like, honestly, it's such an obvious oversight. Because otherwise, every other thing is like, everyone is trans, everyone is gay, you can be whatever you want to be, everyone can be whatever gender you want to be, and so on, right? But yet everyone has to be the exact same, you know, class or work that, yeah, you have, but you're born into your profession, right? It is really, really hilariously oversight, in my opinion. But anyway, that's the first point. Second point then, I'm just going to point out some of the actual and woke progressive points, right, that the anime actually has, right? And I mean, there's a many of them, right? So most people probably have seen some clips or whatever, right? And you've probably heard someone rant about it. And it's very true that every character is basically either gay or trans or something LGBTQ, right? I'm not saying that it's bad, or that it is wrong, or that it is good, or I'm just stating here a fact that it's like every character is, right? So, otherwise though, I don't actually find it that bad, honestly, in this sense. Because, for example, in episode 4, you have this the trans teacher then, which is female to male trans teacher. He comes out to the main character, Rosemary tells Rosemary that, you know, he used to be a woman and so on, right? And that scene actually wasn't that bad. He's like, I used to be a woman, you know. And she's like, oh, pretty cool. And then they're just gonna go on with it, yeah. So the anime isn't actually that pushy when it comes to this, so to speak, SUV or whatever, right? I actually didn't find that terrible in that sense. Not really. It's like the main couple, 4 main girls, right? One of them, her aunts are lesbians, and they live at their place, and they do a lot of lesbian stuff and so on, you know, and they're kissing and so on, yeah. Like, but it's not like that. It actually isn't that like super in your face when it comes to per character. There's no like grand speech. You have to be a woman or whatever or so on. It really isn't. The thing is more that, how can I say it, right? If you take every person in reality, in our real reality, right, and they ask how many people are gay, maybe it's at 10%. How many people are trans, like 5%. How many people are gender fluid, like 1%, you know, whatever. Right? And you combine all these people, every LGBTQ plus, and everything, yeah, put them all, right, in one huge demographic. How many are that on the planet, right, in percentage? Maybe it's 20%. That seems kind of high. Let's say it's 50%. That's it really high, because it's probably a lot more cis people than 50, right? But let's argue that it's 50. That sounds very, very high. But that might be true, right? Okay. In this anime, it's like 95%, right? Or like 99%. And there, we see it's very pushy and very evolved progressive. It's like, okay, everyone is gay, trans, or bi. It's kind of like that, right? So the actual scenes aren't like that terrible. I've seen way worse scenes in other cartoons or, you know, Western television and so on, absolutely, and gaming and so on, way worse scenes. So honestly, isn't that bad. It's more that it's the frequency, right? It's more the frequency. It's like in every episode there has to be a gay scene, right? In every episode there has to be a lesbian scene, basically. So on. That's kind of it that makes the anime stand out on that Vogue. It still, of course, fails, as I talked about, because they completely ignored to actually make the elf not be a typical elf, right? The dwarf is a dwarf and so on, yeah. So it's kind of like, the fox is sneaky, the weasel is a liar and so on, yeah. It's like, oh, well, if you're born a fox, you have to be a bastard, you know, yeah. It's just sad, honestly. I find it kind of sad that they failed so much, though. But some of the more... There is one thing that I dislike, though, and this is coming to the next video, I think, primarily more, but the writing is so terrible. And I keep saying that, and because I want to do subscribe and get to my next video is coming out later. But generally, the writing is incredibly bad. The anime is incredibly boring, right? And yeah, again, it's not the worst anime and so on. But anyway, when it comes to the writing of the Vogue points, there's only actually one scene where I felt it was terrible, like really terrible, because this didn't make any sense. So Snapdragon is like the best character in the anime. He, she, or they, he kind of ends up changing his gender, but not really. So I don't know actually where I would what gender Snapdragon has in the end there. I would say technically he's still a man and is considering becoming a woman. I suppose in the last episode. It's kind of unclear, honestly, because it kind of ends with that storyline. But so Snapdragon is actually the best written character, because Snapdragon is the only character to get like a backstory and so on. So that's more in the next video talking about that, because the main character has no backstory. Like there's no build up, there's nothing. So it's terrible anime, okay? Terrible anime. Jesus, how bad it is. But anyway, so Snapdragon is a cross-dresser earlier in the anime, cute mermaid girl, and like, you know, again, I don't mind that, you know, I'm into all yaoi, cross-dress, otokonokos, that's my stuff, right? If you see more of the videos, that's always the best girl. Cross is always the best girl, right? So I don't mind that, and genuinely, Snapdragon is my favorite character in this anime. Like, seriously. And that was wrong. Anime, I mean. Seriously. Yeah. I actually do enjoy Snapdragon the most, because when he calls out Sage as being an idiot and so on, that's the best in the anime. But because this anime has to be so, you know, woke, progressive, right? And the writers are so bad at the job, they can't like write it in a natural way, right? That is, of course, yeah, again, for example, Ranma. This is how you write a good transgender character without being, you know. But anyway, so they can't write that in a good way. And what I mean is that there are many issues with it. But the big issue is that Snapdragon sees the other characters, right, turn into mermaids. So there's a scene where the elf, the dwarf, and so on becomes mermaids. And previously, there's a girl that turned into a cat. And he's seen the two, yeah, and people, they revive like a bone dragon, and it's all this magical, you know, mumbo jumbo, right, in this anime. Yet Snapdragon is completely confused and surprised when he then, I guess still a man in this part, talks to the transgender professor. And the professor is like, oh, you ever heard about trans magic? We can turn into a woman, you know? It's pretty easy, yeah, it's pretty easy to drink a potion, you know? And he's like, what? This trans magic? And like 5 minutes ago, he saw the other character turning into mermaids. He saw another woman turning into like a mermaid to a human. And he's seen people turning into like dragons, right? And cats and so on. So I'm just like, how? How can you be surprised that you have gender magic when you've seen like a woman turning into like a male dragon or whatever, you know what I mean? It's just like, but people can change forms all the time in this anime. So that scene is god awful, right? This is more the actual quality of their Vogue. Again, they're failing because they're not even doing it progressively, because everyone has to be what they're born as, which is terrible. Which is, again, very terrible. But they're also failing on this tip, because they take that typical, very, you know, stereotypically kind of cringy written, oh, here's a scene where the character wants to, you know, be a transgender and so on, right? But again, they write it as he is living in our planet, right? Snapdragon is like a cross-dresser, wants to be a woman, kind of something like that, and it's happening on Earth. That's how they're reading it, right? Because it doesn't make any, again, it doesn't make any sense that he had never he didn't know that it existed like trans, you know. Again, it does not literally, it makes no sense. And you saw some people change race, you know, race and beings, they changed form, right? And of course, maybe someone can be like, well, in High Guardian Spice, the trans magic is a higher level of magic than becoming a dragon magic, you know what I mean? But I think we all can agree on, it will be honest here, right, that it sounds a way easier if magic was real, and I had a magic potion that could turn me into like a badass female dragon, or a potion that could turn me into a woman, or a female, right, yeah. What potion would be harder to make? I think we all can feel that, I feel that the female dragon potion shit, that sounds like a higher level potion than just changing gender, right? You know what I mean? Yeah, that you just change gender, like that sounds way easier. And there actually is a bad guy, there's an assassin, and he can change form back and forth very easily. He becomes a woman, he becomes another woman, and he becomes like a cat woman. He can change form all the time, right? And yeah, and that magic sounds way easier to do. To use, you know, swap how you look, right? How you swap, you know, oh, I'm a mimic kind of magic, yeah, kind of mystique, right? In X-Men or whatever, yeah. That kind of power seems way easier to have than having like, oh, I'm turning into a giant bone dragon, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like, how can this be a thing? How can this be a thing that the characters are, not only him, but that's kind of the main character, that she also doesn't know that it exists, right? It doesn't make any sense. The scene isn't pushed, as I mentioned, but when the trans professor talks to the main character, explaining that he used to be a woman and explaining how like trans magic works, she's like, wow, there's trans magic? Again, it doesn't make any sense, because she's like, but her mom is like flying and killing dragons, I don't know, you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense, it's so stupid. It's so stupid that they're still acting like, oh, this is a new thing, right? And at the same time, as every character is basically gay or trans or bi, it's also kind of weird that the students are like confused or shocked that a teacher or whatever, right, is trans or whatever. Because yeah, but everyone is basically like, if you have two mommies, right, and your sister is also a lesbian and so on. So why are you confused that your professor also is lesbian? Because everyone's a lesbian. Like, if anything, you should be shocked that no one is not lesbian. You know what I mean? What? You're cisgender? Thought you were extinct. That would be more of an you know, what people would expect to have as a reaction, I would think, because yeah, they're all basically something that, right? I'm not saying that's wrong, I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying that it's more how the characters aren't naturally actually acting in the world, right? The characters are kind of acting like they are from our, like the kids are basically acting like they're from our planet, where every adult seems to be either gay or trans, yeah, and they're like, what, you trans? Yeah, just like every other adult is, you know what I mean? It's like, why are you shocked for it, you know what I mean? And why are you this magic? One thing I can say also briefly is that all the characters are really, you know, also empathy, but they're also very, very sex positive, which is typically a left, I guess, political point, right? I'm not saying it's bad, I'm also pretty sex positive. I'm just saying that that's a thing in this anime that's very, very clear, that there's a scene when the cat monster is out on a party trying to save the girls, and then a woman dressed as a cat, so I mean she's a human, I think, as a, you know, in a cat suit. She might also just be half cat, half human, you know, kind of hybrid. But this guy's a huge monster cat, and she's trying to seduce him, like straight up, like, oh, let's go and, you know, go and smash me in the woods over there. Yeah, she's trying to really get laid with this cat, and the cat is like, no, I need to save my friends, right? Leave me alone, you crazy thirsty woman, right? And she's like, oh, you don't want me? Wanna F my brother instead? And she's like, I wanna smash my bro instead, basically. So, or you take us both, yeah. So it's like a really weird scene when that's happening. And then we see the teacher, trans teacher, with the lesbian aunts, and they're having some kind of, they're like, oh, you know each other? Like, you know my aunties? You know, my lesbian aunties? And he's like, oh yeah, I know them. And they're like, yeah. It's like this. So there's a lot of those scenes too, where basically every adult person is into adultery, yeah. So I'm not surprised, right? But that definitely gets kind of cringy, where it's like, oh yeah, of course everyone's LGBTQ plus and so on, and also everyone is also like super thirsty and horny, yeah. It's kind of awkward, but I mean, this is obviously an anime, but it clearly is much more of a, you know, a cartoon, right? Actually, but that's more in the next video. But I just pointed out that is kind of, for me, was kind of, it's kind of cringy. That, oh, this definitely is a cartoon, not an actual anime, right? But every adult is like very, very horny, and that feels a little strange, right? Because I haven't seen that in, like, I don't know, there's other cartoons they do, right? So that's kind of awkward, I feel, because you watch this anime and you think that this is definitely made for, like, what, 7-year-olds, you know, 6-year-olds, right? It's made for children, right? It's made for kids. and yet every adult is like, yeah, I want to smash, yeah, I want to take me in the forest. You're like, of course I'm interpreting that, right? But it definitely is heavily implied that everyone is super thirsty, super horny, and it gets kind of awkward in that sense. And I mean, obviously one of my all-time favorite animes, right, is animes like Reviewers. Yesterday I did, of course, a review reaction about favorite animes here, Mushoku Tensei, with a very hen main character. So I'm not complaining, right? I like that shit, but I'm just saying that this anime is clearly supposed to be, I guess, right, for kids, and it's kind of weird. It's like, yeah, let's do it, right? Yeah, like I wouldn't put like my 5-year-old to watch Mushoku Tensei, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of strange, right? I mean, we're kind of weird, you know. You would wait for a bit because there's a lot of, you know, etches and so yeah, this seems kind of fair, right? So that's one thing too. Honestly, that being said though, I didn't mind it that much, honestly. I'm joking about it now, but I actually mostly just laughed. That was actually, in my way, one of the funnier scenes. The anime is terribly boring, and but that actually, having everyone being super thirsty, I mean, it was cringe, but actually it was like a little funny for once. At least. I was like, oh, it's kind of cringe, but a little amusing that they're all so super horny. Yeah, I was like, oh, at least something is happening, you know. But it also gives me a question then. Who is this anime for, right? Because it's done by like really bad. It's a really bad cartoon, kinda. All the basic is like My Little Witch Academia or something, My Academia stuff. Grandchild's wise son or something kind of ish, you know, school thing and so on. So it's very strange. But anyway, that's the video, guys. Press the subscribe button. I actually watch every episode, and I'm gonna do another video where I break down the episodes and also why it's such a terrible anime more in general. But I think the main thing that this anime does is that it's fading, not only being an anime but also a cartoon. It's the worst cartoon I've seen in years. And I've seen all this, you know, Wonder Over Yonder or so on, yeah, and they're all much better. So that is one thing that's very amazing with this show. And I think that the easier word for it to say is it's boring. I keep saying that word, that's the best word for it. Of course, I'll break it down in detail in the next video, but it's really boring. The writing is so boring. Nothing happened for like the first 8 episodes, basically. Like, I was like, holy shit, this is boring. But as I mentioned earlier, though, to burn every bridge, it is not the worst anime this year. Arguably. You can argue this is the worst anime. I think it's a fair point because it's such a cowardly, pathetic anime. And in that sense, it is the worst. But at the same time, we had scenes like Emma, for example, in this year. We had this, I don't know, pseudo Evangelion or whatever, pseudo intelligence Evangelion in Fina. We had stuff like X-Arm, right, and so on. Tesla, it's like a pattern who is producing this stuff. It's a pattern, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I think that Fina is much worse than this anime, honestly. It is a pattern who's doing this stuff. But anyway, guys, subscribe, I'm gonna see you guys with some other more anime today. An actual good anime. I think we watched Vampire Diaries today, which is a great comedy anime and actually funny, you know. Yeah, it's actually hilarious. And of course, we got Mushoku Tensei yesterday. That is an incredibly non-PC, non-SCV anime. That's hilarious. That's the opposite of High Garden Spice. Yeah, from the worst to the best. Here's the High Garden Spice review after watching the best anime yesterday. But really, though, not too much here. But Jesus Christ, last episode of Mushoku Tensei, it was so good. It was so organic. It was so sad. It was such strong emotions, right? That is something that High Garden Spice can never do because everyone is flat, right? Everyone is so flat. Like, I have no idea why any of the main characters does anything they do in High Garden Spice. I think the whole anime again. I think the whole anime. Next video, but still, like, it's like I don't even understand why they want to be guardians for. Like, there's like no backstory. Only the trans character Snapdragon that it maybe trans. She is the only person to get like a backstory. I'm not even joking. The only character is a supportive character. Again, Snapdragon, which is the best character easily in this anime because that is the only character that has like a character development and also has like a backstory and so on. And that's a supportive character. It is weirdly thing. But I guess it goes back to this woke progressing, right? Because the only character they spend time on is the actual character that is considering changing gender, right? Which is really weird, because he or she or whatever gender he becomes if he made more episodes, it is not the main character. Right? It's not even in the friend circle. He's dating kind of one of the main characters later, right? So it is very weird, very weird. But anyway, see you guys and have a great day.